I can't believe this is happening, Margaret muttered under her breath as she grabbed her tote bag. The early morning sunlight spilling across the quiet suburban street, highlighting the dew on the neatly trimmed lawns and the soft hum of distant traffic. She had planned her trip to the supermarket meticulously, thinking about the ingredients she needed for the week ahead, the fresh produce, the loaf of sourdough she knew her granddaughter loved, and a small selection of flowers for the kitchen table. The routine was comforting, a rhythm she had maintained for decades, a thread of normalcy weaving through her life since her husband had passed 2 years ago. She locked the door behind her, her keys clicking against the brass doorknob, and started down the driveway, her mind already cataloging the items she would check off her list. As she walked, she rehearsed the order of aisles in her head, planning to make the trip efficient, to avoid standing in long lines, to have enough time to prepare lunch before her book club meeting. Her feet crunched over the pavement, the neighborhood slowly waking up, children on their way to school, neighbors jogging or walking dogs, the scent of cut grass mixing with the faint aroma of morning coffee wafting from open windows. She reached into her bag for her wallet, only to realize the unmistakable emptiness, the hollow space where her identification and debit card should have been. A flutter of panic raced through her chest, a quick tightening of her stomach as she glanced back at her doorstep, half expecting, irrationally, to see it sitting there, perhaps left behind in a moment of distracted haste. She stopped, planted her feet firmly on the sidewalk, and took a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs and calm the sudden surge of anxiety. The sun reflected off the windshield of a passing car, a blinding flash that made her blink, and in that brief pause, she noticed Emily approaching from across the street, carrying a reusable grocery bag, her hair catching the light in a way that made Margaret momentarily forget her predicament. Emily's smile was polite, a hint of curiosity in her eyes as she realized Margaret's halted movement and the small gesture of patting empty pockets. Margaret straightened, adjusted her coat, and managed a small, self-deprecating laugh, masking the embarrassment that pricked at her cheeks. She explained, almost as if to herself, that she had forgotten her wallet, that it was a simple mistake, nothing catastrophic, yet the words felt inadequate against the sudden vulnerability she felt standing alone in the morning chill. Emily nodded, a reassuring presence, and offered to accompany her back home or lend a hand in some way. And for a moment, Margaret felt the warmth of human connection, a thread of kindness threading through an otherwise mundane day. As they walked together briefly, Margaret's thoughts drifted to past mornings, the countless times she had organized family meals, coordinated schedules, and quietly ensured that everyone had what they needed, often going unnoticed, her efforts woven into the fabric of daily life, without recognition. The weight of these memories made the minor crisis of the forgotten wallet feel disproportionate, yet it grounded her, reminding her of her resilience, of the calm control she maintained even when plans went awry. They reached the corner where Margaret would turn back toward her home, and she paused, taking in the familiar sights, the row of maples along the sidewalk, the hum of the local bakery opening its doors, and she allowed herself a quiet smile, acknowledging that while the morning had brought an unexpected disruption, it also offered the subtle reassurance that even in small moments of chaos, she could navigate with grace, maintaining dignity and composure as the world carried on around her, unaware of the minor drama that had unfolded on a sunlit suburban street. Margaret stepped back onto her front porch, the crisp morning air brushing against her cheeks as she fumbled for the keys she had absent-mindedly placed in the side pocket of her tote bag, her mind racing through the errands she had planned for the day and how one small oversight now threatened to derail them. She could hear the distant hum of traffic on the nearby avenue and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog, the neighborhood alive yet indifferent to her minor panic. Carefully, she turned the doorknob and entered the cool, dim hallway of her home, her footsteps soft against the hardwood floors polished to a gentle shine, the smell of brewed coffee lingering from moments earlier. She set the tote bag on the counter and opened the drawers, scanning for her wallet, lifting receipts, coupons, and a neatly folded grocery list, each paper a reminder of meticulous planning that had become a habit over decades of managing her household with precision. Finding nothing, she exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the slight morning chill, and sank into the chair at the kitchen table, letting her hands rest on the smooth surface, contemplating the small but frustrating setback. Outside, the day continued its rhythm, neighbors greeting each other, cars rolling by, oblivious to the subtle tension that had taken hold inside this quiet home. Margaret glanced at the clock on the wall, noting the minutes ticking away, each second amplifying her sense of urgency as she considered alternative ways to complete her shopping without cash or card in hand. Her thoughts drifted to the practicalities of life, the small victories and minor frustrations, the balance of independence and occasional reliance on the kindness of others, and she felt a familiar resilience settle over her. The phone on the counter vibrated, a text from Emily suggesting a temporary solution, a light of cooperation in the routine she navigated alone. Margaret smiled faintly, appreciating the gesture, recognizing that even small acts of support could transform a day clouded by inconvenience into a manageable series of steps. She stood, gathering the items she had collected, folding the papers neatly back into the tote bag, and considered what she would need to do next. A quick stop by a neighbor for assistance, a check of the pantry to adjust the shopping list, and perhaps a call to the grocery store for a simple exchange. The air shifted as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the living room floor, illuminating familiar photographs on the wall, snapshots of decades past, moments of quiet joy, and family gatherings that had shaped her life, reinforcing the continuity of her experience even amidst minor disruptions. Margaret moved methodically, opening cabinets, checking the refrigerator, marking items on her list with deliberate care, each movement steady, deliberate, and thoughtful, reflecting a life honed by years of attentiveness and attention to detail. The momentary frustration began to fade, replaced by a calm focus, a measured pace that allowed her to navigate the unfolding complications with grace and composure. She felt the rhythm of the morning, the interplay of light, shadow, and the soft sounds of her home, grounding her, and she realized that one forgotten wallet was but a single thread in the broader tapestry of her day. With each deliberate step, each careful thought, she reaffirmed her ability to manage, to adapt, and to continue moving forward, embracing the challenges and unexpected moments with patience and a quiet confidence that had been cultivated over a lifetime of facing the unpredictable with dignity and poise, ready to meet the rest of the day with clarity and resilience. Margaret gathered her shopping list and retraced her steps back to the corner where she had met Emily, the morning sun casting soft shadows across the pavement, the occasional breeze carrying the faint scent of fresh-baked bread from the local bakery. She walked with careful deliberation, her hands lightly gripping the tote bag that contained her neatly folded grocery notes and a small selection of reusable bags, each one prepared for specific items she intended to purchase. As she approached the supermarket, she noticed the familiar sliding doors opening automatically for other customers, their footsteps echoing softly on the polished tile floors inside. Margaret paused just outside, taking in the scene. A line of shoppers maneuvering their carts through aisles stacked with colorful fruits and vegetables, employees restocking shelves, and the low hum of refrigeration units blending with the quiet chatter of people navigating their weekly errands. She adjusted her coat, straightened her posture, and reminded herself to remain composed, to treat the forgotten wallet as a minor obstacle rather than a disruption of her carefully ordered day. She scanned the entrance for the customer service desk, a small sign indicating its location near the checkout lanes, and mentally mapped the quickest route to retrieve temporary assistance, envisioning the few simple words she would need to explain her situation. A young employee noticed her hesitation and offered a friendly greeting, a nod that suggested understanding without requiring any elaborate explanation. Margaret acknowledged the gesture with a subtle smile, appreciating the understated kindness, and walked toward the desk, her movements measured, deliberate, each step reinforcing her sense of control. She glanced at the nearby produce section, admiring the rich colors of apples and oranges, the neatly stacked green beans, and the bright reds of tomatoes, allowing herself a brief moment of distraction and appreciation for the small pleasures of daily life. At the customer service desk, she explained that she had forgotten her wallet, her voice steady and calm, avoiding any hint of frustration or embarrassment. The employee nodded and suggested a temporary solution, handing her a small slip that would allow her to select essential items and pay later, a practical compromise that restored her ability to continue with her errands without undue stress. Margaret accepted the slip, thanked the employee, and carefully walked through the aisles, selecting items from her list with precision, placing each one in the designated reusable bags, mindful of weight and fragility. As she moved from aisle to aisle, she observed the other shoppers, noting the variety of ages, appearances, and shopping styles, and reflected on the interconnected rhythms of daily life, the quiet routines that each person maintained. She allowed herself small moments of reflection, remembering the years she had spent preparing meals for family gatherings, managing schedules, and ensuring that everyone she cared about had what they needed, the memories providing a gentle undercurrent of pride and satisfaction. By the time she reached the checkout lanes, Margaret had selected all the items she intended to purchase, her tote bag now filled in an organized and efficient manner, ready to be scanned. The employee assisting her processed each item with the same calm professionalism, Margaret observing the transactions quietly, feeling a sense of accomplishment and quiet contentment that she had navigated the morning successfully despite the minor disruption, a reminder of her resilience and the steady determination that guided her through daily life. Margaret stepped away from the checkout counter, her tote bag secure over her shoulder, the slip from the customer service desk folded neatly in her hand, a tangible reminder of how a small act of assistance could restore her sense of control. The sunlight streaming through the store windows illuminated the vibrant colors of the fresh produce displays, casting gentle shadows on the polished floor and creating a warmth that contrasted with the initial tension of the morning. She navigated the aisles with methodical care, noting the arrangement of goods, the spacing of carts, and the efficiency of other shoppers moving along the pathways, each step a reinforcement of her deliberate pace and composure. As she approached the dairy section, she paused to consider the selection of milk, comparing the expiration dates and the subtle differences in packaging, her eyes reflecting the meticulous attention she had cultivated over decades of household management. The soft hum of refrigeration units blended with distant conversations, creating a backdrop of ordinary life that contrasted with the extraordinary sense of accomplishment she felt at managing the unforeseen complication of a forgotten wallet. Margaret selected her items with deliberate precision, placing them carefully in her tote bag, ensuring that delicate items were protected, heavier ones positioned for balance, a quiet testament to her lifelong practice of thoughtful organization. At the end of the aisle, she encountered a familiar face, an elderly neighbor she had often waved to from her porch, offering a brief greeting and a nod of mutual recognition, the exchange brief but grounding, a reminder of the community in which she moved. She smiled faintly, acknowledging the shared understanding that sometimes the day required small adjustments, and sometimes those adjustments revealed the character and patience one had cultivated over the years. Moving toward the checkout area, she observed the systematic scanning of items, the beeping of barcodes, the polite exchanges between clerks and customers, all part of a rhythm that she now appreciated more fully, the ordinary moments taking on a quiet significance against the backdrop of her morning experience. As her groceries were bagged, Margaret carefully reviewed the items, ensuring nothing had been missed, and the sense of satisfaction that accompanied this careful inspection settled over her, a subtle pride in maintaining control and order despite the unexpected twist earlier. She handed over the slip from customer service for verification, her hands steady, voice calm and measured, a demonstration of composure that reflected both the practicalities of the situation and her inner steadiness. With the process completed, she adjusted the tote bag on her shoulder and turned toward the exit, the automatic doors sliding open smoothly, welcoming her back into the warmth of the morning sun, the sounds of the neighborhood greeting her once again. Margaret took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill her lungs, a gentle reminder of continuity and resilience, and she began the walk home at a steady pace, her mind cataloging the next steps in her day, the errands still to be done, and the quiet assurance that she had met the morning's challenges with poise, navigating unexpected disruptions with thoughtfulness, composure, and a calm determination that anchored her in the familiar rhythm of daily life. Margaret walked steadily along the quiet neighborhood streets, the tote bag of groceries balanced carefully over her shoulder, the sunlight warming her face as she considered the remaining errands for the day. The gentle rustling of leaves in the trees above and the distant sound of children playing at a nearby park created a rhythm that contrasted with the minor chaos of the morning, providing a comforting background to her focused steps. She approached a familiar intersection and paused, observing the orderly flow of cars and the pedestrian crossing ahead, noting the neat lawns and well-kept homes, as if cataloging each detail to maintain a sense of control over her environment. Margaret adjusted the strap of her bag and continued, each step deliberate, measured, reinforcing the calm she maintained despite the earlier disruption. As she walked, her thoughts drifted to the small joys of the day ahead, the planned lunch with her neighbor, the short visit to the library for a new novel she had been anticipating, and the quiet time in her kitchen later to prepare a simple dinner that would feel comforting in its familiarity. She reflected on the mornings she had spent preparing meals for family gatherings, the careful attention to detail in planning, arranging, and executing each step to ensure that everything was in order, and the satisfaction derived from managing the household with quiet efficiency. Margaret passed the corner bakery, the scent of fresh bread and pastries wafting out as the doors opened, and she paused briefly, considering a small treat to lift her spirits and reward herself for navigating the morning successfully. Continuing on, she noted the interactions of other shoppers and passers-by, the polite nods, the casual greetings, the shared recognition of ordinary routines, and she felt a sense of connection to the community around her, a subtle acknowledgement of the shared human experience in the ordinary flow of the day. Arriving back at her home, she set the grocery bags on the counter and carefully unpacked each item, placing fruits, vegetables, and other perishables with mindful precision, ensuring that nothing was damaged or misplaced. The act of organizing provided a quiet satisfaction, reinforcing her sense of order and control, and she allowed herself a moment to appreciate the smooth flow of her day, the minor obstacles navigated with grace and composure. Margaret arranged the groceries neatly, checked the pantry for missing staples, and adjusted her list for any additional items needed, a small ritual that affirmed her capability and careful attention. As she stepped back to survey her work, she felt the quiet pride of a day managed successfully, the reassurance that small disruptions could be handled thoughtfully, and the knowledge that her resilience and deliberate approach allowed her to maintain dignity, focus, and a steady rhythm even when unexpected challenges arose in the course of ordinary life. Margaret carried the sense of calm accomplishment with her as she moved toward the small reading nook by the window, the late morning sun casting a warm glow across the polished hardwood floor and illuminating the soft beige armchair she favored for moments of quiet reflection. She placed the tote bag gently on the floor, unhooked the handle, and smoothed the fabric over the edge of the chair, appreciating the simple order she had restored to her morning. Reaching for the stack of books she had selected earlier in the week, she settled one in her lap, the cover worn from previous readings, the pages familiar beneath her fingers. Outside, the neighborhood continued its gentle rhythm, the distant laughter of children from the park blending with the soft hum of passing cars, creating a soothing soundtrack for the unfolding calm of her home. Margaret adjusted her posture, sitting upright yet relaxed, allowing herself to breathe in the quiet satisfaction of having navigated the morning successfully, the small obstacle of the forgotten wallet, now a distant memory, softened by measured problem-solving and thoughtful actions. She turned the pages slowly, letting the words draw her in, each sentence an anchor to the ordinary joy she cherished, the rhythm of reading a comforting constant that reinforced the stability she had established for herself over years of mindful living. The sunlight shifted gradually, highlighting the subtle patterns on the rug beneath her feet, the gentle shadows of window frames, and the soft contours of the living space she maintained with care and pride. Margaret paused briefly to glance out the window, observing a neighbor watering plants, a mail carrier making his rounds, the interplay of ordinary life continuing outside, unnoticed yet integral to the flow of her day. She reflected on how small adjustments, patience, and calm decision-making had turned what could have been a frustrating disruption into a manageable, even pleasant, experience, reinforcing her sense of resilience and agency. A soft breeze fluttered the curtain, drawing her attention back to the book, and she allowed herself a faint smile, acknowledging the subtle joys that punctuated her routines, the tactile sensation of paper, the gentle warmth of sunlight, the quiet awareness of time unfolding steadily and predictably around her. Margaret marked her place in the book and set it aside, taking a moment to straighten the cushions of the armchair and arrange the small decorative items on the nearby table, each action deliberate and mindful, a reflection of her enduring commitment to order, beauty, and personal satisfaction. As she rose to check the refrigerator and pantry for items needed for the evening meal, she carried with her the quiet confidence that had guided her through the morning, that even unexpected disruptions could be met with grace, that thoughtful action and calm presence were sufficient to navigate minor challenges, and that the ordinary rhythm of life, when approached with care and attentiveness, could provide both comfort and a steady sense of accomplishment, reinforcing the enduring steadiness and quiet power that defined her days. Margaret moved to the kitchen counter, setting the groceries down with care, arranging each item in its proper place, the morning sunlight falling through the window and highlighting the polished surfaces of the countertops and the soft tones of the cabinetry. She opened the refrigerator door, checking the shelves and adjusting containers to make room for the fresh produce, milk, and other essentials she had brought home, each movement deliberate and measured. The hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock filled the space, creating a quiet rhythm that accompanied her methodical tasks, a background to the satisfaction she derived from restoring order. Margaret placed the milk in the designated shelf, aligning the cartons with precision, then moved to organize the fruits and vegetables, inspecting each item for freshness and quality, her attention to detail a quiet reflection of years spent caring for her household. She paused to wipe the counter, ensuring it was clean and clear, then arranged the bread and pastries she had chosen, taking a moment to appreciate their aroma and appearance. The gentle light streaming through the window cast soft shadows, creating a sense of calm and stability that contrasted with the earlier tension of the morning, reinforcing her sense of control over her environment. As she worked, she reflected on the patterns of her daily life, the routines that had provided structure and a sense of purpose, and the small challenges she had navigated with composure and thoughtfulness. She noted the subtle changes in light and shadow across the kitchen floor, the way the sunlight highlighted the edges of objects, and the interplay of colors and textures, observing the ordinary world with a mindful attentiveness that grounded her in the present. Margaret checked her shopping list once more, ensuring that every item had been accounted for, and adjusted the placement of a few items to maximize efficiency and accessibility, her movements careful and precise, a demonstration of her practical intelligence and deliberate planning. She paused to take a deep breath, feeling the calm that came from completing the task, a quiet satisfaction in knowing that she had met the morning's challenges successfully. The air in the kitchen was filled with the faint sense of fresh produce and bread, the combination both comforting and familiar, a reminder of the small joys of daily life. Margaret straightened the items on the counter one last time, ensuring everything was in order, and allowed herself a moment to appreciate the sense of accomplishment, the affirmation that she could navigate disruptions with grace and maintain a steady, composed presence in her home. The ordinary rhythms of the day continued outside the window, neighbors tending to gardens, children playing at a distance, the subtle hum of suburban life providing a gentle soundtrack as Margaret stood quietly, embracing the satisfaction of small victories and the calm power of attentiveness and thoughtful action. Margaret stepped back from the kitchen counter, taking a moment to breathe deeply, the gentle warmth of the late morning sun spilling through the window and casting a golden glow across the room, highlighting the polished surfaces and the subtle textures of the countertops and cabinets. She placed a small vase of freshly cut flowers on the table, their fragrance mingling softly with the aroma of the bread and produce she had carefully unpacked, creating a comforting atmosphere that filled the kitchen with a sense of quiet order. Margaret adjusted the chair beside the table, arranging it so that she could sit and review her weekly schedule, her hands resting briefly on the smooth surface as she considered the tasks ahead, preparing a simple lunch, making a short call to a friend, checking on a few household items that needed attention, and organizing her notes for a community meeting she planned to attend later in the afternoon. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock provided a rhythmic backdrop, blending with the occasional chirp of birds outside, and Margaret allowed herself a small smile at the continuity of ordinary life, the predictable movements and sounds grounding her in the present moment. She retrieved her notebook and pen from the nearby drawer, carefully opening to a fresh page, and began to make notes on what needed to be accomplished, the act itself a soothing ritual that reinforced her sense of control and careful planning. As she wrote, her mind wandered briefly to memories of past mornings, of family routines and small joys, the repetition of daily life and the satisfaction derived from thoughtful organization, each reflection deepening her appreciation for the quiet competence she had cultivated over the years. Margaret paused to glance out the window, noting the light traffic on the street and the neighbor tending to their garden. A simple interaction of lives moving alongside one another without intrusion, each person maintaining their own order and rhythm. She returned to her notes, making subtle adjustments and considering contingencies, her actions precise and intentional, a testament to her focus and dedication. The aroma of coffee brewing in the kitchen filled the air, mingling with the lingering scent of bread, creating a comforting sensory landscape that underscored the small accomplishments of the morning. Margaret rose to pour herself a cup, savoring the warmth in her hands and the gentle bitterness on her tongue, a small ritual that marked a pause and allowed her to reflect on the unfolding day. She looked around the kitchen, observing the neatly arranged groceries, the sunlight illuminating the careful placement of items, and felt a quiet satisfaction in the visible order she had created, a tangible expression of her thoughtful attention and steady presence. The neighborhood continued its gentle rhythm outside, children laughing at a distance, mail carriers making their rounds, and the faint sound of conversation drifting through open windows, all forming a subtle soundtrack that reinforced the ordinary stability of the world beyond her door. Margaret took another slow breath, acknowledging the minor challenges she had navigated and the calm resolution she had maintained, the ordinary tasks completed with care, providing a foundation of accomplishment and quiet confidence that would carry her through the remainder of the day, each measured movement and mindful choice reinforcing the steady, composed presence that defined her approach to life and the small yet meaningful victories of everyday experience. Margaret stood by the window, the late morning light reflecting off the glass and casting a warm glow across the living room, highlighting the subtle patterns of the rug and the carefully arranged furniture, a quiet testament to the thoughtfulness she applied to every corner of her home. She adjusted a small stack of mail on the table, aligning each envelope with precise care, her fingers brushing over the paper and feeling the weight and texture, each piece a reminder of the routine details that formed the framework of her day. Outside, the neighborhood moved along in its gentle rhythm, the distant laughter of children playing, the hum of passing vehicles, and the faint sound of a lawn mower in the distance, all blending into a soothing background as Margaret reflected on the accomplishments of the morning. She poured herself a second cup of tea, the steam curling upward, filling the kitchen with a comforting aroma that mingled with the lingering scents of the groceries she had carefully organized. Sitting at the table, she allowed her gaze to wander over the room, noting the sunlight glinting off the polished surfaces, the gentle movement of the curtains in the breeze, and the quiet shadows that shifted with the passing hours, a subtle but constant reminder of the orderly world she had shaped and maintained. Margaret thought about the small interactions of the morning, the assistance she had received, the careful attention she had paid to each task, and the quiet triumph of managing disruptions without allowing them to disrupt the flow of her day. She opened her notebook, jotting down a few notes about the week ahead, considering the errands, the phone calls, and the small personal projects that would keep her mind and hands engaged, each notation a deliberate step toward organization and preparedness. The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking the passage of time in a rhythm that seemed to match her own measured pace, reinforcing the sense of continuity and stability that she valued. Margaret rose and moved toward the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of familiar titles, the familiar texture and weight grounding her, a quiet affirmation of the constants in her life that provided comfort and reassurance. She selected a book and returned to the table, placing it gently beside her. Notebook, a companion for moments of reflection and contemplation that allowed her to appreciate the steady, ordinary beauty of her surroundings. The sun had shifted slightly, casting longer shadows and highlighting the subtle imperfections and details that lent character to her home, and Margaret felt a quiet satisfaction in observing them, a sense of connection to the space she had shaped and cared for with patience and attention. As she sipped her tea, her thoughts wandered to the day ahead, the tasks she would complete, the moments she would savor, and the people she might briefly encounter, all part of the tapestry of daily life that, though ordinary, offered its own quiet victories and small delights. Margaret set the cup down gently, breathing in the calm and measured air, her mind at ease, appreciating the seamless integration of the morning's challenges and successes into the familiar rhythm of her day, and she allowed herself a small smile at the quiet triumph of maintaining composure, focus, and grace throughout every moment, a reflection of the resilience and thoughtful attentiveness that defined her approach to life and her ability to navigate each unfolding moment with dignity and calm.